At the outset, I'd like to just refer to Prime Minister Khan's visit to Tohoku region that is scheduled for tomorrow. He's planning to take a day trip to Miyagi Prefecture by making use of multi-purpose assistance flight, U4, and is planning to visit affected areas and evacuation centers of Ishimaki City. And also he's planning to visit the ground self-defense forces that is based in Sendai City. And this is for the purpose of encouraging those self-defense forces people who are working really hard in the region to continue to work on rescue and assistance efforts. And as you know, this is the third time for Prime Minister Khan to visit the area, and Prime Minister Khan is very much interested in grasping the situation of affecting areas, and also listening to the voices of those people, especially who are at the evacuation centers, and we are paying due attention to prevent excessive burdens on the local communities and those people who are engaged in support activities in the region. And so he's leaving Tokyo tomorrow morning and will be back in the afternoon back to Tokyo. So that's my initial remarks, and I'd like to now turn to Mr. Nishiyama for his initial comment.
Thank you, Mr. Shikata. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to explain the most recent status of Fukushima Daiichi plants. First of all, with respect to Unit 1, we are injecting nitrogen to the containment vessel of the Unit 1 steadily. The pressure of the vessel is rising because of this action, and we think it's natural. And the rest of the parameters of the reactor are relatively stable. Regarding the stagnant water in the turbine building, we are transferring the water in the hot well to the condensate storage tank. Because the previous pace of this action was too slow, we replaced the pump. And this is the preparation for transferring the stagnant water to the hot well. Regarding Unit 2, the parameters of the reactor are relatively stable. Regarding stagnant water, we finished transferring the water from the hot well to the condensate storage tank today. This is the preparation for pumping up the stagnant water to the hot well starting maybe tomorrow. But we will prepare for this action. And we will first move the water in the trench attached to Unit 2 to the hot well of Unit 2. Regarding the water which was flowing from the crack near the pit, it was stopped by our effort, and we are injecting water glass and some other chemicals to the ground under the pit to stabilize the situation regarding the water which was stopped to flowing into the sea. We are also we are taking actions to isolate the seawater in the kind of lagoon in front of the intakes of seawater into the units 1 through 4. I have a picture here. So lagoon, I said, is this one, this rectangle, and we put some materials to isolate this part of water, which will have the inflow of those unit 2 and other units. So that may be a contaminated water. So we would like the water not to go outside of this lagoon. So we use those materials such as large size sandbags, silt fence, and steel plate. Those will be used for that purpose. Regarding Unit 3, the parameters of the reactor are relatively stable. And we threw 75 tons of pure water to the spent fuel pool of the Unit 3. With concrete pumping machine yesterday evening. Regarding stagnant water, although we have a plan to transfer the water in the hot well to the condensate storage tank, we found that the hot well is full of water and the amount of water is even increasing. We are investigating where the water comes. Regarding Unit 4, we are throwing pure water to the spent fuel pool of the Unit 4 today. And regarding Units 5 and 6, we released 1,300 cubic meters of slightly radiated underground water to the sea, and we'll finish this action with the remaining amount by April 10th, tomorrow. In addition to those items related to each unit, we released 7,700 cubic meters of slightly radiated water in the radiation waste disposal system to the sea, so that we can bring the highly radiated stagnant water in the turbine building or in the trench of the Unit 2 into this RAD waste, radiation waste disposal system. We'll finish this releasing soon. And we separately we sprayed synthetic plastic to settle the radiated dust on the ground. And apart from this Fukushima situation, we have some changes in our regulation. This morning, our agency, NISA, announced a new measures to strengthen emerging preparedness of the nuclear power plants in terms of the number of emergency diesel generators. Previously, in case of cold shutdown or during the exchanges of fuels, it was enough for the electric companies to connect one diesel generator as a source of emergency power. However, after the April 7th earthquake, it was found that in Higashidori nuclear power plant, among 3 diesel generators, 2 were under maintenance, and when the outside power was disconnected, one remaining diesel generator was turned on and worked, but after the outside power source was restored, the diesel generator leaked the diesel and was cut off from the line. Although there are 3 battery cars in Higashidori, and the risk of not to be able to cool the fuel core and spent fuel pool was low, NISA thinks that there should always be 2 diesel generators, even in case of coal shutdown or during the fuel exchanges. The background of our thought is that there is decay heat, and we should make it certain that proper cooling mechanism is maintained. That's all for my report today. Thank you very much.
Next, Mr. Matsunaga, please.
Thank you, Mr. Shikata. I'd like to, as always, brief about additional information about foreign assistance. In response to the Great East Japan earthquake, representatives of the Embassy of Tanzania in Japan and the Tanzania community in Japan visited the Natori City Hall in Miyagi Prefecture to donate Tanzanian coffee and canned foods to disaster-stricken people at 2 p.m. today. The government of Japan deeply appreciates the cooperation of the government of the United Republic of Tanzania and the Tanzania community in Japan. Yesterday, Turkey's rescue team completed its activities and started preparation for departure. The team, consisting of 32 personnel, have undertaken their rescue activities since March 20th. They were stationed in Rifu, Miyagi Prefecture, and worked in Tagajo, Ishinomaki, Ogatsu, and some other places of the same prefecture. We deeply appreciate the extensive and prolonged services provided by the Turkish team. Last Wednesday, India's rescue team completed its activities and started preparation for departure. The team, consisting of 46 personnel, have undertaken their activities since March 29th. They were stationed in Rifu, Miyagi Prefecture, and undertaking their activities in Onagawa-cho of the same prefecture. So far, assistance teams of 24 countries, territories, and international organizations have undertaken activities in response to the Great East Japan earthquake. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs have dispatched liaison officers to each of these assistance teams in order to inter alia facilitate coordination between the foreign teams and the local governments and areas accepting these teams. As of yesterday, two humanitarian assistance teams are still in operation. They are the Israeli medical team and the team of World Food Program. Also, as of yesterday, 2 nuclear-related teams are still in operation. They are U.S. experts and IAEA experts. To date, 21 foreign humanitarian assistance teams have undertaken their activities. They were from Singapore, Germany, Switzerland, Mexico, UK, US, New Zealand, Italy, Australia, Mongolia, China, Republic of Korea, Russia, France, Indonesia, South Africa, India, Turkey, Taiwan, UNDAC, and UN OCHA. We are grateful for all these cooperations. Thank you.
I'd like to open the floor for questions. Andy?
Could you summarize, I mean, the not so bad, but what went wrong at Onagawa and Higashidori? You mentioned the diesel, but I understand there was some loss of coolant, or a loss of cooling to the spent fuels. Can you just discuss how long that was? And I think there were some spills at Onagawa, maybe at Higashidori also. Could you just give us a little rundown?
西山さんに伺いますけれども、女川と東通りで何がうまくいかなかったのか要約していただけますでしょうか。先ほどディーゼル発電機の意味だと思いますが話をされましたけれども使用済み燃料の冷却機能が一時期、失われたと理解しておりますが、どのぐらいの長さ、どのぐらいの期間、使用済み燃料の冷却機能が失われたんでしょうか。それと女川と東通りで、なんか漏れとかもあったようですけれども、大体どういったことがあったのか、全体像をお話しいただけますでしょうか。
まず東通りにつきましては、すべての外からの電源が失われまして、一つの非常用 DG が起動しました。
First, for the Onaga Dori, first of all, for the Higashi Dori nuclear power plant, all of the outside power source was lost, and one emergency diesel generator started operating.
その後、使用済み燃料プールの冷却系が一時、21分間停止しました。また復旧いたしました。
And after that, the cooling system of the spent fuel pool stopped at one time for 21 minutes, but recovered after that.
この外部の電源が、一部復旧した後に、非常用の、ディーゼル、DG がその軽油の漏洩を起こしまして、それでストップしました。
And after part of the outside power source recovered, one emergency generator stopped operating because of a spill of gas oil.
ここでの問題点は3台あった非常用 DG のうちで2台を定期検査していたところ、その1台は動いたんですけれども、それが油漏れで止まってしまったということです。
And the problem here is that of the 3 emergency diesel generators, 2 were in periodic inspection, and the remaining one did operate, but subsequently stopped operating because of the spill of their gas oil.
それでその非常用 DG の故障が起こる前に外からの電源が復旧していましたので、一部は復旧していましたので、問題は起こりませんでしたけれども、このことに鑑みて我々は非常用 DG を常に2台用意しておく措置を本日指示いたしました。電力会社に指示いたしました。
And there was no problem this time because the part of the outside power source was restored before the emergency diesel generator went out of order. But in view of what has happened, we instructed the electric power companies today to always have in preparation or always have on site 2 emergency diesel generators that will always be ready to operate.
ただもちろんさらにそのバックアップとして、電源車は3台ありましたし、使用済み燃料プールの冷却のためには消防車も1台ありましたので、最終的にはリスクが防げたと思っております。
Of course, however, besides the emergency diesel generator and the outside power source, we had 3 power source vehicles as a backup. And also for the cooling of the spent fuel pool, we had 1 fire engine also on site. And therefore, we believe that we would have been able to prevent any risk from occurring.
女川につきましては、まず外からの電源4回線あったうちの3つが停止しました。
And with regard to the Onagawa nuclear power station, of the 4 outside power source lines, 3 stopped.
で、その間使用済み燃料プールの冷却系については、3号機とも一時止まりましたけれども、一番長いもので1時間20分間止まっていました。
And also, all of the 3 cooling systems for the spent fuel pool also stopped, and the longest period of stoppage was 1 hour and 20 minutes.
電源の非常用ディーゼル、非常用 DG については外部の回線が1回線はつながっていましたから必要はありませんでしたけれども、その2台あるうちの1台が4月1日から故障していたということがありました。
And since 1 outside power source line was operating, there was no need for the emergency diesel generator. But we have found that 1 out of the 2 emergency diesel generators that were on the site have been out of order since the 1st of April.
以上のようなことで今回いずれも外の外部の電源が戻って、それから使用済み燃料プールの冷却の停止も解除されておりますけれども、一つはその非常用 DG についての先ほどの2台備えろということにしたことと、それから使用済み燃料プールの冷却が止まったことについては今原因の究明をしております。
And so, as I have just explained, this time all of the outside power source were recovered, and the cooling system for the spent fuel pool, which had stopped at one point, has started moving again. And as I have mentioned earlier, we have given instructions to the electric power companies to always have on standby 2 emergency diesel generators that is ready for use. And 2, we are now looking into the cause of why the cooling system for the spent fuel pool stopped operating.
Next question. Could you identify yourself?
You mentioned that you said you still didn't know the cause of the stoppage of the cooling system. Do you have any speculation about why that happened, since there was apparently some partial supply of electricity to the plant at Onagawa? And secondly, earlier in your presentation you mentioned that you're now using concrete pumps to spray water into the plants. Why did you not use that right at the start instead of these fire trucks?
ワシントンポストのものですけれども、関連質問を伺います。先ほど、使用済み燃料プールの冷却系が停止した原因を究明するとおっしゃいましたけれども、例えば女川の場合は一部の供給はずっと続いてたわけですので、なぜ停止したのか、大体観測といいますか、でなぜ止まったのだと思われますか。あともう一点としては、現在 放水のためにコンクリートポンプ車を使っているとおっしゃいましたけども、なぜ最初からコンクリートポンプ車を使わなかったんでしょうか。消防車の代わりに、なぜ最初からコンクリートポンプ車を使わなかったんでしょうか。
まず使用済み燃料プールへの冷却系が止まった原因については、各木によって、女川の3つの木と、それから東通りの1つの木と、それぞれ違う原因ではないかと考えています。
東通りの一つですね。First of all, regarding the cause of why the cooling system for the spent fuel pool stopped, we presume that the reason is different for each of the different units. In other words, the reason for the stoppage of the cooling system, I believe, is different for the 3 units in Onagawa and 1 unit at Higashidori.
それで例えば今、これはまだ推測ですけれども、一つの理由は地震によって水面が揺れて、それによってポンプの吸い込む圧力が低くなったというような警報が発生したためにポンプが止まったことがあるのではないかという推測が一つあります。
Although this is still speculation, we would speculate that one reason may have been the decline in the pressure of the intake of the pump as a result of the tremor or the oscillation on the surface of the water as a result of the earthquake. And this set off the alarm, which resulted in the pump stopping.
もう一つの推測される理由はポンプを制御する電源に、その電源が電気が流れすぎたことによって失われるという現象が起こった可能性があると思っています。
And although this is also speculation, another reason that we can imagine may have been the possibility that too much electricity flew into the power source for the pump control system, resulting in the loss of the system.
そういう推測を働かしながら他の原因も今追求しているところです。
So while considering such possibilities and speculating such possibilities, we are also looking into other causes as well.
それから2つ目のご質問についてはコンクリートポンプ車についてはそういうものがあるということで、提供のオファーを受けてからは我々として東京電力を中心に、なるべく早くそれを使うということを考えてた結果、現在というかそのタイミングで使ったわけです。
In response to your second question about the concrete pump vehicle, Tokyo Electric Power Company and others have made an effort to use the concrete pump vehicle as soon as possible when we received an offer, when we were informed that there is such a vehicle and when we were offered to use that vehicle. So we have started using the concrete pump vehicle as soon as we could after we were offered the use of the vehicle.
でその間、消防車の方も使うことをもともと考えていましたので、それと並行して使っていたということになります。
And at that time, since we had been considering using fire engines from the very beginning, we used the concrete pump vehicles in parallel with the fire engines. でその使い始めたのはいつでしょうか。
ちょっと今材料を確認しないといけないので。
Can can have just a little bit of time because we have to check the documents.
Azari-san.
Thank you. Khaldun Azhari, Pan-Orient News. We heard kind of good news yesterday that Japan lifts ban on shipments of Fukushima milk and Gunma spinach, according to Gigi report, and that government will shortly finish review of nuclear evacuation zone. So I'm wondering if Mr. Nishiyama has update on this kind of development that might give the impression that the radiation is going down, basically.
Excuse me, a nuclear evacuation zone is going to be
Yeah, there's government to shortly finish review of nuclear evacuation zone. So it seems the government now is is reviewing now the evacuation zone around Fukushima plants.
パンオリエントニュースですけれども、最近は福島県の原乳の一部と群馬県のほうれん草の出荷規制が解除されたという朗報が聞かれておりますし、また時事通信によりますと、政府は近いうちに、避難地域の見直し、ちょっと見直しがどっちの見直しか、広げるか縮めるか分からない、見直しを行うということも報道されておりますけれども、こういった動きの最新状況についてお話しいただけますでしょうか。
まず今放射性物質のモニタリングの結果を見ると、遠い地域、福島から遠い地域については最初に水素爆発があった頃に飛んでいったと思われる放射性物質がだんだんと少なくなってきて、環境はだいぶ改善されていると思います。
When we look at the results of the monitoring of radioactive material, we can see that there has been a gradual decline in the radioactive material, which is assumed to have been released at the time of the first hydrogen explosion, and the more so in areas that are further away from Fukushima. And I believe it is fair to say that the overall environment is improving.
それでそういう原乳であったり野菜であったりということについてはチェックをして、それで一定の安全だと分かったものについては出荷ができるようになってきています。
And for raw milk and vegetables, after checking, and for those which have been found to be safe to a certain degree, the raw milk, vegetables, and others now can be shipped.
避難地域については2つの方向の今検討がありまして、1つは今のようにだんだん放射性物質が減ってきているにしてもだいぶ最初に放射性物質が出てから日が長くなっているので、月日が経ってきているので、日にちが経ってきているので、蓄積している蓄積した量がだいぶ多くなってきている地域があります。
Regarding the evacuation zone, currently we are giving consideration in two directions. One is even if the radioactive material is declining, as we see at the moment, since many days have passed since the first release of radioactive material, we believe that there are regions where there has been quite an amount of accumulation of radioactive material.
でそれが今までの避難区域の中に含まれない部分についてはどう考えるかということについて今検討しています。
And so we are now considering how we should consider this matter for the areas that have not been included in the evacuation zone up to now.
もう一つの方向は すでに避難している20キロより外側の住民の方々について、20キロより外側に避難している方々について、その一時的にも元の、住居に戻りたいというご希望が強くなってきているので、それをどういうふうに実現できるかというのがもう一つの検討事項です。
And the other point that we are now considering is in relation to the ever-growing wish from the people that have evacuated to the area outside the 20-kilometer diameter zone, and how we can grant their wish to be able to temporarily return to their homes.
もう一つ前のご質問の答えでコンクリートポンプ車を最初に使ったのは3月22日の17時過ぎになります。4号機への放水でした。
And in response to the previous question that I had to check about when we started using the concrete pump vehicle, we first used the concrete pump vehicle around 5 p.m. On the 22nd of March for unit number 4.
You have material in front of you.
Just to supplement what Mr. Nishiyama said, there is a PowerPoint presentation titled "Nuclear Accident at the Fukushima Daiichi Nuclear Power Station," and I guess you all had them. And if you take a look at the slides, three pages from the back, there is page 21, atmospheric readings within 100 kilometer, and for example, even Fukushima, which is this monitoring post is 61 kilometer from, I believe, the power station. Ever since the 15th of March, there has been constant decline up until the day before yesterday, and it's way below 5 micro sievert per hour. And as our colleague from MEXT has been saying, there is a continuous trend of the result of readings at the monitoring post. This one is from a 20-kilometer zone of Fukushima Daiichi, but the peak here is March 17th, and there has been continuing decline in terms of monitoring result. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
You mentioned that one of the possible reasons for the problem with the cooling system was that electricity suddenly flew into the system. That, at least, so it sort of blew a fuse. Is that what you're saying?
関連質問です。先ほど、冷却システム、冷却系がうまく機能しなかった理由として可能性として考えられるのは電気が流れすぎたとおっしゃいましたけれども、それは電気が流れすぎてヒューズがなんかが飛んだということなんでしょうか。
And was that when electricity was restored, or I thought the problem was the opposite, that there was no electricity?
それ電気が復旧したときに急に多すぎる電気が流れたということなんでしょうか。それとも逆だと思ったんですけども。
何らかの外のこの、ポンプの冷やすためのポンプの外側で、何らかのショート的なことが起こって、そのことからポンプを守るために、ポンプに流れ込む電気が切られたということではないかと思います。
Due to some kind of fuse blowing in the pump for cooling that is outside, the electricity being supplied to the pump stopped, probably in order to protect the pump itself.
Azhari-san again.
Thank you, Azari again, Panorama News. This is question for Mr. Matsunaga. I heard that for ministry, some official expressed the, concern about some foreign media making incorrect information about the radiation. So do you have further examples about this kind of situation? How do you evaluate the foreign media? How does the foreign ministry evaluate the foreign media reporting on this issue? Thank you.
松永さんへの質問ですけれども、外務省の外務省の担当者が外国メディアの放射能に関する報道が、不正確な情報が報道されているということに対し懸念を表明されたということですけれども、これに関してどういうものなのか、例はあるのでしょうか。それと、外国プレスに対して外務省はどういう評価をお持ちなのでしょうか。
Thank you very much. 日本語でよろしいですか。Thank you very much. Well, the reference was made at yesterday's press conference held by Chief Cabinet Secretary, and Chief Cabinet Secretary Edano stated in his morning press conference in response to a question by a press call that sometimes there are certain exaggerations in the press reports in foreign media, and in that respect he expressed his intention to instruct the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to monitor the press reports by the foreign media closely, and where necessary take actions. And well, as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs have been monitoring the press reports by Foreign Press Corps very closely. We are receiving a lot of reports from our overseas missions, and as referred to by the Chief Cabinet Secretary, there are certain press reports which are described, which may be described as exaggerations, and in response to those kind of exaggerations or misleading reports, our foreign missions, where necessary, approach to those media and request corrections, for example, or discuss the matter with the media concerned. That's what we have been doing. And in response, taking the further instruction from the Chief Cabinet Secretary, we are going to further strengthen our monitoring and take actions as necessary. Thank you.
Let me just supplement what Mr. Matsunaga said. We are not talking about categorically foreign press. There are various reports, and but what we are a bit concerned is there are instances that the Japanese exports, for example, food items, or even manufactured goods, are scrutinized in terms of radiation levels. And there are references like Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Fukushima, or people in Tokyo wearing masks, fearing possible radiation. But this is the season for hay fever, and many Japanese do wear masks. So there are some cases that seem to go a little beyond, and we are concerned that some countries, trading partners, are taking measures that are not based on scientific grounds. And there are rules that are stipulated under WTO, and each member country is obliged to take measures in accordance with scientific grounds. But before that, we are aware of the need to explain to international press about what we are doing and try to be as transparent as possible. And we believe that this kind of briefing is part of our efforts to make sure that there will not be any misunderstandings of what we are trying to do. And and we all welcome your participation in this press briefing in this regard. Thank you.
Hi. Could you tell me if you've seen Mr. Shimizu, the president of TEPCO, recently? And has his long absence had any effect on efforts to contain the disaster at Fukushima Daiichi? And secondly, I'd like to return to probably something you may have discussed in previous briefings, the question of whether Prime Minister Khan's visit to Fukushima Daiichi on the 12th, whether that delayed the steam venting and may have contributed to the subsequent explosion, or whether it had any impact whatsoever on effort.
東電の清水社長に最近お会いになったかどうか教えていただけますでしょうか。それと清水社長が長い間姿を見せなかったことが今回の福島第一のいろいろな緊急事態を封じ込める上で影響があったのでしょうか。それと前にも言及されたことだと思います。言及があったかもしれませんけど、他の方から菅首相が12日に福島第一発電所を訪問したことが結果的に蒸気のベントを遅らせ、これが結果として爆発に至ったということはあるのでしょうか。またこういったことの影響というのはあったんでしょうか。
まず清水社長が復帰されてから私はまだ清水社長に会っておりません。11日のその地震の後、不眠不休で働かれたので、体調を崩されたというのは理解できることであり、これから先、しっかり役割を果たしていただけることを期待するということをしか申し上げられません。
First of all, I have not met President Shimizu since he has returned to his job. It is understandable, however, that his health may have deteriorated for a while since he has been working without any sleep and without any rest since the earthquake occurred on the 11th of March. And all I can say is that I do hope that he will be able to make sure to play his role.
菅総理が現場に行かれたことはベントには何の影響もなかったというふうに思います。それで、総理が現場を見られたことは、その後やはり自衛隊とか海外からの支援を受けるとか、 日本国内の全勢力をこの事態の収拾につぎ込むためにぜひとも必要なことだったので、この、事態の好転に、貢献したことはあってもそのマイナスになったことはないと思っております。
And in response to your second question, Prime Minister Khan's visit to the site did not have any effect on the venting. And I would say that it was absolutely necessary for Prime Minister Khan to go and see the site in order and I think it was helpful in the subsequent self-defense force operations, as well as our acceptance of support and assistance from overseas, and to have all the energy and efforts of Japan be devoted to this incident. So while it has contributed to having the situation make a favorable turn, I do not believe it had any negative effect.
When did you last see Mr. Shimizu?
清水社長に、最後にお会いになったのはいつですか？
私が最後に会ったのは、彼が2回目というか今回一番最近入院する直前の日だったと思います。
I believe the last time I met him was the day before his most recent hospitalization.
Any other questions? If not, we would like to conclude today's briefing, and I assume that we will have a briefing tomorrow at this Foreign Press Center of Japan.